Hi. Hello. Good morning. Great to see you all here. So again, my name is Clinton. I'm from an organization called the Bronx Freedom Fund. We're what you call a charitable bail organization. That means we pay bail for free for people who can't afford it. This issue of bail was addressed in our Constitution, actually. The 8th Amendment states, excessive bail should not be required by any definition of the word excessive is an amount you cannot afford to pay. However, people are given bail if they can't afford all the time. In fact, in 2015, there was a study that showed only 15% of New Yorkers given a $500 bail could afford it. That means 85% of the people we live with in this city, millionaires, don't make enough money, have access to, or can scrounge up enough to buy their own freedom. For this very reason, 98.9%, which is 1.1 away from 100, as in every single one, 98.9% of all misdemeanor convictions in this country, not just our city, are by plea bargains. That means the great majority of people who have convictions admitted to guilt so they could go home. It was the only way they could get out of jail. In fact, 70% of the people in jail today are there awaiting trial and have not been convicted of anything. Most of them will give up attempting to prove their innocence and take a guilty plea just to buy their freedom. But instead, our clients, those who bail we paid, mostly have their cases dismissed and justice is redeemed. Since DAs can't keep our clients in jail, they can fight for their innocence from their home, which is why most of their cases get dismissed. Now, why am I involved in this work, and why do I think you should be involved too? That was the question King was responding to in his letter from a Birmingham jail. Why is he involved? Dr. King answered his critics in the church that said he wasn't from Birmingham, so why was he there protesting? But King wrote, just as Paul was commissioned to bring the gospel, how could King in Atlanta, Georgia, knowing the tragedy taking place in Birmingham, Alabama, the lynchings, the beatings, the segregation, how could he sit there knowing that fight was happening and not be a part of it? God has always called his people to fight on his behalf, often in places they seemingly didn't belong. Think about Jonah. He was sent to Nineveh, the capital of Assyria. Jonah had no earthly business being in Assyria. In 2 Samuel 12, God called the lowly prophet Nathan to go to the palace and chastise David for the sin he had with Bathsheba. In Exodus 3:10, God sent Moses to Pharaoh to free his brethren. In Judges 6:14, God sent Gideon to save Israel out of Midian's hand. And injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 25, verses 36, 39, and 40, I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. They replied, when did we see you sick or in prison or go to visit you? He responded, truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Jesus taught, when we do for each other, we're doing for him. Martin Luther King understood Colossians 3:23-24, and Paul wrote, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Since we are called to serve the living God, how do we serve him? One way is to take up the causes he cares about, and God cares about justice. Isaiah 1:17 says, learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed. In other translations, it says, correct the oppressor. Dr. King taught that correcting the oppressor causes a certain tension. In this letter he wrote from jail, he said, My citing the creation of tension as part of the work of the nonviolent resistor may sound rather shocking, but I must confess that I am not afraid of the word tension. I have earnestly opposed violent tension, but there is a type of constructive nonviolent tension where it is necessary for growth. He went on to write, we know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. For the same reason King protested in 1963, you and I should care about the legally innocent who are in jail in 2020 for only one reason: they can't afford to get out. King went on to write, human progress never rolls in on wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts of men willing to be co-workers with God. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the forces of social stagnation. Church, I challenge you to be answers to prayer. Even though God has the power to right any wrong on his own. In 1 Corinthians 3:19, Paul says, we are co-laborers in God's service. God has seen fit to make us women and men his hands on earth. We have means to be resources for others. We learn so we can freely teach. We have food so we all can eat. We have so no one else goes without. You are the blessing. You are the blessing that God has in store for the person in need. Like Mordecai said to Esther in Esther 4:14, for if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. And then he told her, who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. This time is now, church. Let the full man not say to the hungry, wait to eat. Many of us have a buffet of justice at our fingertips, while then our neighbors die from the malnutrition of societal bigotry, classism, racism, sexism, and nationalism. Dr. King wrote a warning in his letters to Christians that may even be more true now than it was in 1963. He wrote, if today's church does not recapture the sacrificial spirit of the early church, it will lose its authenticity, forfeit the loyalty of millions, and be dismissed as an irrelevant social club with no meaning for the 20th century. Every day I meet young people whose disappointment with the church has turned into outright disgust. You know, it's as if King looked into the 21st century, where we are today, and saw the future. How many of our friends, family, and children see the walls of the church like the inside of a tomb? When the church turns a blind eye to injustice, the world dismisses our voice. We are held to a much higher standard because we claim to know God. So I leave you with this thought that King posed in his letter. He wrote, so the question is not whether we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists will we be? Will we be extremists for hate or for love? King recognized everyone is passionate about their desires. So what is yours? What ignites your flame? I pray your desire will be to take up for those that you have the ability to support. I pray you will answer the call and be God's hands on earth. I pray that your faith will be extreme. I pray your hope will be extreme. I pray you will walk in the calling God has laid at your feet and be the hand that reaches down into an abyss of despair and embrace their neighbors as Christ has done for you. If you would like to find out more about the Bronx Freedom Fund and any cash bills that exist, please go to www.thebronxfreedomfund.org. There you can find out how to volunteer and help change the narrative that bad people are in jail when it's mostly people who just can't afford to get out.